This is the Pet Buzz.
This is the Pet Buzz.
And here's the Dynamic Pet Duo.
Wesley Moore, owner of Alligator Alley, joins us to discuss how to protect yourself and your pooch from an alligator attack.
So, Wesley, thanks for joining us today on the Pet
Hey,
Buzz.
my pleasure. My pleasure.
So, talk to us about alligators.
Well, we can start talking about, the history of the American alligator. We're looking at an animal that fossil records indicate is around 5 million years old. Alligators have been in walking North America, long before, we ever really showed up and started causing problems. Here lately, of course, alligators are all over the news because when you consider, the human population and, it's, our desire to move to the coast and move to warmer climates. I always say that, we used to call places creeks and rivers and bayous. Now it's referred to as waterfront property. So unfortunately, we're coming in contact with these animals, not because they want to come in contact with us, but because, they're just kind of running out of space, so to speak.
It's really kind of interesting because I learned about this new phrase called an ambush predator. Are alligators ambush predators?
An alligator is an ambush predator, and it has to do with the way the animal is designed. An alligator, all of the muscles that operate his jaws, which are, his instruments for making a living, are off to the side and underneath. And so what you have is an extremely low profile. Compare that with people. All of our muscles that operate our jaws sit on top of our head. So, we have 2 legs. And if we were in the water, we would look like gigantic bowling balls. So again, having all of those muscles sit off to the side and underneath, you can take an alligator that's 12 feet and 500 pounds. He needs 18 inches of water. He can only expose a 1/16 of an inch of the top of his head. They judge distance very well. And so being such massive animals, they also produce very little disturbance in the water. So the animal is designed to be an ambush predator. Low profile, that's probably one of their greatest assets. And I will say they are successful well over 50% of the time. You compare that with other, what we consider to be predatory animals. An alligator, the reason he's a king of the swamp is what we like to call him.
So, where do most of the alligator attacks take place?
In the U.S.
I would say, Florida probably has more. And the reason Florida and Louisiana are the 2 states with the 2 greatest alligator populations. Now, there are 9 states that claim viable alligator populations all the way from, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Mississippi, Louisiana, Alabama, Arkansas, Texas, and Oklahoma. But Florida, when you look at the human population, I think Florida now is 21 million people. Florida has 1.4, 1.5 million alligators. And you take a climate which is warm predominantly year round. Alligators, their body cannot process food when we start getting into those mid 50s. And so some of these other states like Alabama, our climate is it's not going to be suitable for an alligator to eat in December, January, February. You start talking South Florida, where it never gets below the mid 70s. You combined a year-round ability to eat, a massive human population, and let's face it, we love our pets. People like to take their pets. Pets are not designed, particularly dogs and things. They don't have that predator relationship built into them, so they don't understand that they should be afraid of an alligator. And you deal with an animal that again thrives on ambush. You get a pet close to the water. I always say, alligators eat 4-legged furry things.
It's interesting that you say that because I started looking at some of the alligator attacks over a period of years in Florida. And in the beginning, it was kind of like, it was a lot of teens, which I thought was really interesting. But lately, in the last few years, teens hanging out on the water in a boat, going out in the water. And then now you see a lot of older people like on that waterfront property that you talked about with the high price value. Now we're seeing them on the golf course. And we just saw this week a guy fishing. And as he was fishing, here comes an alligator running, and those suckers run fast. But lately, we've been seeing a lot of these dog people are, whether they're women walking with their dogs or men. That obviously last year, one of our favorite videos was the guy who had the Cavalier King Charles Spaniel in Naples who got attacked, who, remember, and he still kept the cigar in his mouth. And then we just had another one last week. So talk to us about how pet owners need to be careful and what they should do if their dog gets attacked.
First of all, alligators are very good at associations, like patterns. So I tell people, I said, if you're going to, walk your dog close to a water source, particularly, like South Florida, don't do it every day at the same time, because alligators are very good at putting that time and food association together. So if you get off work every day at 5 o'clock and at 5:10, you put your leash on your pet, you walk them down to the lake, and you're down there in that same time window. After a period of weeks and months, alligators start to build up that time, place, food association. So I tell people, vary it up. Don't take your dog walking in the exact same place next to the water at the exact same time every day, because that alligator will eventually pattern you. Secondly, be vigilant. Before you go down to the water, with a small pet on a leash or without a leash, look around, see if anything is out of place. Stay away from areas where there might be cover up next to the water, like aquatic vegetation, lily pads, hydrilla, things that animal can use as camouflage, things like logs, tall grass. So it takes a lot of, some common sense just to go, if the area looks like it might contain an alligator, in the state of Florida, it more than likely does. But again, I say that, don't set a pattern, be aware of your surroundings, and then just use a little common sense. But unfortunately, sometimes all those we can avoid all three of those things, and bad things occasionally will happen, and it unfortunately does, when alligators are involved.
So what if your dog is attacked? What should you do? How do you fight back? What shouldn't we do?
The shouldn't we do, is one of those situations. Let's say if it's a large, and I've seen some of the videos on TV, people rescuing their dog from an alligator, and the alligator is typically small. But some of the videos I've seen, the alligators are 3 to 4 feet. A 3 to 4 foot alligator, from a bite force perspective, it's very similar to ours. It takes an alligator about 6 to 7 feet where they start getting that 400 to 500 pound bite. If it's an extremely large alligator, we're talking 10, 11, 12 feet. You're comparing a bite force of close to 2,000 pounds. So that's the equivalent of having a car parked on top of you. So if an alligator of that magnitude, happens to get something, put up resistance. These are animals, they don't like resistance. An alligator is accustomed to, when they grab something, they want to get back to the water as quickly as possible, and then use their powerful jaws to, crush bones, incapacitate, and then they will use their massive frame to drown. So put up as much resistance as you can. I always say, if you're going to get your pet down there by the water, and have a leash on them, that way you can maintain. If you see something, try to get that animal back. Unfortunately, though, the only way an alligator that's a large alligator is going to let go is if he wants to. There's nothing physically that you are going to do to make him let go. And unless you can bench press a car, you are not able to pry his jaws off. Now, if it's an alligator 2 to 3 feet long, like some of these videos I have seen, yes, that's a full grown man. That's not a problem. But when they start exceeding that 9, 10 feet, again, the only reason that animal lets go is because he senses it was something put up resistance, which again, they don't like resistance. B, it was something that he was not familiar with. Or 3, the alligator said, you know what, this is not worth me getting injured. This is not worth my time. I'll go look for something else, like a turtle or a snake or a frog or a fish, something that is much easier for them to deal with.
It's really interesting about the time thing that Wes talked about, because, when he was mentioning that, a few minutes ago, I was thinking about that poor boy at Disney who was killed. And I was thinking that every night at the same time in that area of the resort, they always had fireworks,
Large.
So the alligators they knew there were people there. It's unfortunate that the signs were not clear, that people still got in the water, So I think it's important to, like you said, and pay attention to the signs that are up, because you never know. It's dangerous enough anyway not to be paranoid, but if it says don't go in the water, guess what? Don't go in the water. If you hear about alligators on the golf course, check with your club, find out what they're doing. I mean, I think, prevention is half the battle. I don't know, obviously, if poking the alligator in the eyes or hitting them in the head with a bat is going to help, but, maybe if it's a small alligator. And I think that's, a thing that we really have to take into consideration, because I think, like you said, Wes, a lot of these videos have led us to believe that we can fight off these alligators. Well, some of us can.
The only vulnerable spot that animal has is the ear flap. An ear flap on an alligator is an extremely sensitive spot. If I'm having to, deal with one of my larger fellows and I need him to move, or we're in a precarious situation, the ear is an extremely sensitive spot on the animal. The eyes, they actually have a bony flap. They can close their eyes and make them impossible to get to. I do not recommend putting your hand in an alligator's mouth to remove anything. I've seen some of those, where people say, "Oh, well, stick your hand in there and pry it out." I'm like, that doesn't make the best sense in the world either. But again, common sense is our biggest ally. An alligator's brain is the size of the tip of your thumb. So an alligator can be 13 feet long and weigh 800 pounds. And just remember, his brain is half the size of a pecan. But it is very opportunistic in nature. If they see an opportunity, they will take advantage of that opportunity. So the best thing we can do is just not be an opportunity. And that sounds, very hard to do in some situations, because, we all like to be outside with our pets. But, again, if we use common sense and stay vigilant and pay attention to our surroundings, a lot of these situations can be prevented.
Great, Wes. Thanks for joining us today on the Pet Buzz. What was extremely informative.
Cool.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you for the opportunity. I thoroughly enjoyed it as well.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Pet Buzz.